Daniela Mendez is currently the executive personal assistant for Steve Rozenberg, as well as being a mom of two and a wife. She was born and raised in Chicago but moved to Aguascalientes, Mexico as a teenager, and she is now settled in the state of Guanajuato. Her current career differs very much from her physical therapy degree, even though she does have some HR background as well. She now helps her boss with the day to day in all aspects of his work, personal life, and entrepreneurial journey. She has also single handedly placed over 150 assistants for clients and colleagues of Steve.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode. Today we have a very special guest, someone who's very special to us, Daniela, and we have known her for I've known you for about 3 years now. I was looking back at my, kind of reflecting back of when I first met you, and it was when I first created my LLC for my property management company. And Steve says, you got to talk to Daniela. She can help you get virtual team members. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I remember sitting in my desk at my previous job, closing the door because I didn't want anyone knowing I was working for something else during working hours. And I was talking to you. And then as time went on and our company grew, you helped us get our first virtual team member, which is quite a process because we were nervous. We didn't know what we were doing. And you were very kind in helping us out as far as interviews and things like that. And then over time, we had a death in our family of workers down there in Mexico, and you were very instrumental in helping us through that as well. And then just whenever we have a transitioning team members who are choosing a different path, you've been very kind in getting involved and helping them out too. So you got a very kind heart, and I'm very glad to call you a friend. And I'm glad that I was able to meet you in person last year and again in June, and Fernanda met you.
Yeah.
So this is really cool. I really appreciate our relationship. So anyway, that's all the sentimental stuff aside. Tell us a little bit about who you are, and yeah, just tell us about Daniela.
Well, you fill my heart. Thank you so much for that intro. And definitely, this is the feeling is mutual. I know it sounds cheesy, but a lot of times when I start talking to people about like becoming a virtual assistant or hiring a virtual assistant, one of my like taglines I'd say is always like, I'm not just like a placement service or
Mm-hmm.
headhunter or whatever you want to say. Like I consider myself like a matchmaker, and it sounds cheesy, but I'm like, I want to create relationships. I don't
Yeah.
want to like, oh, just this person, like, just make it like a business transaction, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is like you and your team and everything is just the physical embodiment of that, right? It's not
Yeah.
just a person to fill a seat.
Mm-hmm.
In general, it's someone that's actually going to be uh, a very important piece in the puzzle of what you're trying to create. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so yeah, who am I? That is a very good question that I'm still trying to figure
Yeah.
out.
Do you even know?
And not really. No, I'm still figuring that one out. I am Daniela. I was born and raised in Chicago. I didn't actually move to Mexico until I was around 15.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so that's probably one of the reasons I don't have an accent. Well, I do
Yeah.
have probably a Midwest accent. Um, so yeah, I came to Mexico when I was 15, finished high school here, kind of traveled back and forth for a minute. I started a major in, which is basically HR.
Wow.
But like halfway, well, a year and a half into it, I was like, you know what, this isn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be, I'm a people person. I can't be in front of a computer
Yeah.
8 hours a day. So I switched majors. I'd always been really interested in like medicine and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm too old to start medicine. I was like, but I can still help people. So I actually majored in physical therapy. I'm officially a physical
Really?
therapist.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
Wow. Never actually practiced. So when I finished, I did my social work. I did, a
Mhm.
couple of clinical stuff and whatnot. And then I was like, you know what, let me go back to Chicago, see like what the process would be of, transferring over to the US and see how that
Mhm.
goes.
Mhm.
Apparently would be kind of like starting from scratch. So I was like, not going to do that. And then at that point I was, with my then boyfriend, now husband. He asked me to marry him. I was like, yeah, all right, cool. I came down to Mexico
I guess so.
again. I guess. And since all the time I was studying, I was always either an English teacher or worked at call centers. So like as part-time work,
Oh,
so
wow,
I
okay.
could, help myself through my studies.
Yeah.
So when I came down here, there wasn't any like call center in the city that I live in. So I was like, okay. And this was like 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So really virtual work wasn't as strong as it was,
Mm-hmm.
as it is now. So yeah, about 8, 9 years ago. So I started being a teacher again. Then, I got pregnant. At that point, I decided, what, I'm just going to be um, a housewife for a while. I'll be a
Yeah.
housewife. I'll have a couple kids. Once they're in like school, I'll get
Yeah.
back in the actual work industry again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when my son was about 6 months old, I want to say,
6 months. Wow.
yeah, a good friend of mine from a call center I used to work at reached out to me, and he was like, hey, you should really, sign up for this kind of job. It's working from home. It's doing this. And I was like, no, I'm going to be a boring mom, stay at home mom for a while. Like that's going to be my life. And he's like, no, but you can do part-time work. You can do back end stuff, admin stuff. Like it doesn't have to be like, like
Wow.
demanding. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was so insistent that I was like, I'm just going to shut you up. Here's my resume. Shut up, get over it. And I was like hoping they wouldn't call me. I was like, now I can shut him up. I gave him what he wanted. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple days later is when I get a call from the company where he worked at. And they were like, hey, we want to interview you. We want to see if we can find something for you. And I told them basically the same thing. Like it has to be something that's like part-time, back end stuff. And maybe not as hard of a schedule because I have a little kid,
Yeah.
still breastfeeding, no family nearby. I can't just
Right.
so they were like, yeah. Of course that didn't happen. My first interview was with Empire Industries, which,
Oh, wow.
is Steve's
Yeah.
property management company. It was to be an assistant to for the senior BDM.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a hit. Like I had the interview with her, if I remember correctly, it was like the person from the company plus, the senior BDM and Steve and Pete, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
They had like
Yeah.
2 or 3 interviews with them.
Yeah.
And it went really well. Like they were like, no, we want her part-time, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And I was like, no, I want her full-time, this and this and this. Like they were telling me, and I was like, I can't. Like at that point, my son was probably like 8 months now, 9
Yeah.
months. And I was like, no, he's still young. I can't do this. And yeah, I ended up like negotiating a little bit more because I was like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need a nanny. I'm going to need this. I'm
Yeah.
going to be able to like, afford that. So this is what I would need. And yeah, it ended up working out. I started working with them I was the first assistant they hired in that department. So I basically created
Oh,
the
wow.
department. So it was like ISD basically. So like for like sales assistant, I can't remember at this point what ISD stands for, but it was like the assistant sales department or something like that.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
So I basically created like all the steps that we would take care of as assistants to be
Mhm.
able, BDMs, good salespeople are good at sales.
Yeah.
They're not good at anything else. So they're
Yeah,
not good at
exactly.
crossing the T's. They're not good at dotting the I's,
they're
keeping
not.
their schedules, organizing stuff, all of that. So that's basically
Right.
what I was helping her with.
Cool.
They saw that helped. They saw the huge improvement. Obviously, she was already good, but now having someone to help her definitely improved her numbers. I mean, there were months where we were closing like 50, 60 doors a month.
Holy cow.
Yes.
Wow.
So
Dang.
like operations could not keep up with us.
Yeah.
So that was like a good problem to have, obviously.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
That's when the company was like, okay, we need to invest more in ISD as we're improving our operations. And, that's how it happened. Obviously, Empire sold to a venture capitalist company. At that point, I had already had my daughter, my second child. So I was like, now I'm really gonna retire for a minute. I'm gonna actually be a stay-at-home mom for real this time. I have 2 little ones. This is a good time now that they're selling. I won't move forward with a new company. I'll just chill and be a mom for a while. And Steve did not allow that to happen. He was like, no, I have a couple of other projects. Like we already have this rapport. I trust you. We've been working together for a couple of years already. Since he was obviously head of the sales department, I was in contact with him constantly. And I was like, honestly, I was really reluctant. I didn't want to, because I was like, no, like, this is, I guess the being scared of something new, right?
Yeah.
And not knowing exactly what he wanted, what he was looking to achieve, like, all of that stuff. So I was like, all right, we'll try it for a while, see what happens, and we'll go from there. And again, being really skeptical, thinking it wasn't going to work out. And 3 years later, here I am going up to Houston next month again to help with his event. So yeah, that is my story, I guess.
That's your story. It's funny. So Fernanda and I have a similar story where she said, hey, you know what? I think I want to step away and focus more in school and just be a student. I'm like, no, you're not. we gotta make this work somehow. And we were able to do that. So, but yeah, when you have great people and they do such a great job, it's like, okay, we need to make this work. Because whatever season you're going through is temporary. And in the long term, if it keeps going and we're doing well, there's going to be something even bigger at the end of that. Right. So, but yeah, I can totally relate to that. The other thing is, you're talking about, you're really, it seemed like your motivation to becoming a virtual team member was the fact that you were a mom and you wanted to be at home and you wanted to kind of have that time to be at home and focus on being a mom.
I mean, yeah and no. I would actually say I had zero motivation to become a virtual assistant. I didn't want to work. Like, I was really in my mindset, like, I'm going to be the stay-at-home mom. I'll take him to daycare. I'll go to the gym. I'll come. I'll cook. Like, I'll do that for 5-6 years. Then I'll get back into the work industry. Honestly, I would say it was like my motivation was to shut my friend up and just like, stop asking me for my resume. There it is. Like, that was my motivation. I was convinced. I was super skeptical. Like, when they told me, I was like, this isn't going to work. How am I going to do that? Like, this remote working stuff doesn't even sound like it. No, like, how can I actually know what they want? They're in another country. Like, I was super skeptical. I didn't think I was going to last at Empire for more than a couple months. I was like, this is probably just not going to work out. I mean, I was super skeptical. I was like probably the most skeptical person that I've seen become an assistant. And that's probably why I'm like a huge advocate for it now, because it's like, I was the person that was like, there's no way this is going to work out. But it was more like, okay, at least at least I can say I tried it and it didn't work out, versus never having tried it. Right. So that was kind of it. Plus I'm naturally a person that needs to be doing something. So even though I adore my kids, even though it does sometimes sound cool to be a stay-at-home mom, like my sister's in that stage of her life right now. And, it seems really cool, like being able to like be at all the events and do all the stuff, which is honestly super convenient because I can still do that with the agreement and everything I have with Steve. I know that not every position is the same. I know not every company is the same. But with the right communication, I think it's really possible to not miss out on the important things in your life when you are a virtual assistant. So I think that the reason I was able to say yes was definitely because it was a virtual thing, because I was able to stay at home, because I was able to get a nanny that came to my house and was just in another room or downstairs with my kids while I'm working. And it wasn't like I'm leaving my little ones with a complete stranger, stuff like that. I mean, I'm like super like, I don't know. I was just with my kids. I let them do dangerous things carefully, but I'm still that mom that like I need to be there. I need to be watching you, even if I know you're gonna screw up, even if I know you're gonna hurt yourself, I need to be there. So even if I'm watching from afar, right? So so I think that was one of the things that like I'm still here. Like if something happens, I disconnect and I go, stuff like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that was definitely being able to be close.
Yep.
Was definitely a factor in me saying yes. I mean, if I had been living in Houston and everything, I would never have applied to a job at Empire physically there. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
that wouldn't
Exactly.
have
It wouldn't have worked.
happened.
Yeah. Yeah. We have the same dynamic. I mean, I would say majority of my team in Mexico and the Philippines, we got a few in the Philippines too. They're either moms and they wanted to work, like, we have a couple who were in the corporate world for several years and then quit to become a mom, but they're like, I still kind of want to work, and this just worked out. And I got a superstar, person on my team, and they get to still be a mom. Right. And then the other group of my team members are students. So it's kind of the same thing. They need somewhat of a flexible schedule. And you hit it on the nail on the head, where you said that the communication is important, because, I'll have team members say, hey, my kid's got, whatever, I got to go to school. I'm like, I get it. I'm a dad. I've got to do that stuff too. So yeah, go for it. I know you're good for the time. Not a big deal. Thanks for letting me know. Fernanda, whenever she's got, like, school stuff, she just lets me know. It's okay, cool. No big deal. And that's the cool thing about virtual work, is that, it really accommodates for that kind of life.
Definitely. I mean, I do want to be realistic about it. A lot of people, I'll tell them, like, it's not what you'll see, like, oh, the virtual nomad constantly next to the pool.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely not always like that,
Right.
because you'll have situations where you need to be in a meeting, like right
Yeah.
now, and it's going
Right.
to be really distracting. The internet maybe is intermittent. Like,
Right.
you do need to have that stability. I personally hate working without my second screen. I'm this close to buying a
Yeah.
third one. So when I have to work outside of my area,
Yeah.
I don't like it, because
Mhm.
I like my space now. I like what
Yeah.
I've created.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely it's really nice to have those accommodations, or like
Yeah.
if we have a long weekend, we can go. Like, since the holidays not all holidays are the same, like
Right.
I ended up working Labor Day, but I'm not going to work the next Friday because it's like Independence Day in Mexico, right? And my
Oh,
mom's going to
okay.
have a party. So I'm like, hey, I'm taking this day off, but I'm working this day. Just, again, communication, letting him know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is how it's going to work. And just still being available. I mean, he knows. He'll say, like, oh, hey, I know you're off today, but if you have a chance, can you send me this? If not, I totally understand. Yeah, sure, cool. Or I'll let him know, like, hey, I'm going to work for the next hour. I have a couple minutes. I'm going to do this. If you need anything, let me know in the next hour or two. Stuff
Yeah.
like that. So just that communication is, I always tell people, it's always better to overshare
Exactly.
Yeah.
and look crazy
Mhm.
than undershare and look shady, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I like that too, because I mean, in the virtual world, I find that you tend to want to over communicate, and, like, even just like in situations like that, but even when you're giving someone compliments, you want to overdo that, because what we talked about in one of our previous episodes is that, we don't work in the same office. So it's not like I could walk down to Daniela's office and say, hey, how was your weekend? Tell me about your kids, blah, blah, blah. How was the baseball game? Oh, hey, Friday night, let's all go out and have a margarita, right? We can't do that in the virtual world. So you have to be intentional with your communication, so that way people don't just feel like they're just somebody who's sitting in Mexico helping you out, but they feel a part of a team, a part of a family, if you're that good.
Yeah, definitely. I totally
Yeah.
agree with that.
So, yeah. So as far as your role, you've kind of explained it, kind of like from day one to about right now. So you were the assistant to the BDM, then you went into ISD, maybe that's two of the same, and then becoming Steve's executive assistant. But you're not a secretary. I mean, you do administrative things for him, but there's a lot more that you do. Like, what are the things that you do that you can help from afar to help out somebody here in the US?
I would say anything that you don't need like a certification for or boots on the ground for is
Yeah.
what, I mean, maybe personally I cannot, like, I will not be able to like create your website, right? Because that's not my forte. That's not
Yeah.
something I know how to do, but it's
Right.
something that a virtual person could do. So anything that's, digital, virtual, anything that you can do online, you can do from wherever. I mean, unless you need, like I said, a certification or something like that, like, oh, only these, like, it's like in property management, right? There's certain things that in certain states that only a property manager can do or stuff like that. And obviously I wouldn't be able to,
Right.
or boots on the ground. Like I can't go to physically a person's place, but I can help with everything from his calendar to creating agreements, to invoices, to receipts, to cancellations, to buying stuff, to appointments, to bidding off. I mean, he's also an airline pilot. So,
Yeah.
bidding off days for him on the airline, oh, hey, I need to do this trip for October. So make sure you bid that off so they don't put any flights on that day.
Yeah.
As some stuff as simple as that to basically organizing a 3-day event in Houston.
Yeah,
And
exactly. That's
all of
big,
what
right?
that entailed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really, I mean, that was probably one of the biggest challenges I've had now being an assistant. I mean, and it was, I mean, it was a goal and it was definitely a challenge because a lot of times you think of event planning and you think boots on the ground, right? You think of a
Right.
person
Yeah.
physically there looking at the stuff and, picking things out physically,
Right.
and that was the idea that I had, that it was something that had to be, I physically had to be there.
Right.
Um, so I had my reservations, but I was like, okay, we'll do it. We'll try it. I'll, look as much into it as I can. I'll investigate everything I can. I'll ask all the questions 3, 4, 5 times. It was definitely nerve-wracking because it was the first time I had done an event of that magnitude. We
Mhm.
had done a couple of other smaller events,
Yeah.
but definitely not at that level, not at that magnitude, not with the detail that we wanted to have. And it was a great success. So I think it was
Yeah.
really like for me, like being able to say like, oh my God, I did that. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously not all the internal stuff that people went through, obviously not like the
Sure.
curriculum, the syllabus or anything like that, but like all making sure that everything in the back end was done, accounted for,
Right.
transportation, hotels, places, food, like everything else was in place. So
Yeah.
I guess that's where, my OCD and perfectionism
It
really helped me out.
yeah, it really
Yeah.
showed up because I went there, Fernanda was there too, and
Yeah.
it just seemed like everything worked perfectly. I mean, I know it doesn't always work perfectly, and you're probably like running around trying to figure because something didn't work out. But the way and funny, so you weren't on last night's mastermind talk. Someone had mentioned that there was during the hot seat session, I guess the power went off. Remember the power went off for a few hours. There was a person that was there that said, I had no idea the power went off. Like, well, that's how good it was and how good you guys worked together to make everything happen. Yeah. So that was really um cool. And the amazing thing was that was your first one. It's like, man, it seems like you've been doing this for a
Yeah.
while. So it was a really good 3 days for sure.
Yeah, one of the camera guy, one of his friends went, I think she was there for like one of the dinners or the last event or something. And
Mhm.
she thought I lived in Houston. She's like, oh, you live here? Like we should go out. Like what company do you work for? Blah, blah, blah. Like she thought I was like
Oh, cool.
the like part of an event planning company
Oh,
that
wow.
was like the one that organized it. And I was like, oh no, like that's not how it is at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that those little details are definitely like a huge compliment and like, oh wow,
Yeah.
I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
getting it.
Yeah. That's awesome. So with all this stuff that Steve's getting into over the last couple of years, he's meeting a lot of people. You're meeting a lot of people. Steve's become a coach, and I'm assuming you can take advantage of the coaching as well as his assistant, or what he does, and you can ask him questions. Over the years, how has that being around that network? How has that affected you in any way?
I definitely think, I mean, it's affected me, my family, me and my immediate family definitely, and maybe like extended people as well. It's just like a ripple effect that you
Yeah.
really you're not that aware of until you like look back and you're like, wow. Probably the first thing is, getting into real estate, because obviously we started as a like property management company and in
Yeah.
sales. So like, getting sold like on the idea of like, hey, this is the way. Because
Mhm.
again, me and my husband were always like, hey, you know what, like with our 9 to 5s, like we'll make it, but we definitely don't want to just rely on that. Like we always were like, let's
Yep.
do something. And we were always thinking like, oh, we need to like start a business. But we always thought like, oh, you like a business that we need to be a part of, right? So it was
Yeah.
always like, oh, like, I don't know, a laundromat, a coffee shop or something like that. But it's like, where are we going to put it? I don't have the bandwidth. You don't have the bandwidth. Like, who's going to start it?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So it was always like, you know, kind of really taking a deep dive into a potential, you know, business journey or endeavor. And then it was like, you know what, we can't do it. Like, we just can't, you know, you have too much on your plate. I have too much on my plate. None of us can do it. None of our families are business oriented. Both of our families were like, you know, our parents worked, they did their 9 to 5, they, you know, they retired, and that's it.
Yeah.
My dad now is also starting like businesses and stuff. You know, he did have
wow.
a couple of like commercial, you know, places to rent and whatnot.
Mhm.
So that is something that he always knew as well.
Yeah.
But now he's also like, he got an opportunity, and he's like, yeah, and he's 70.
Wow.
And my
Wow.
dad's like, he got a business opportunity of planting agaves for tequila, and they have like a ranch. And well, my dad's family, so they're like, yeah, let's sell it. So like, I guess
Wow.
with me talking to him a lot about stuff
Mhm.
like, hey, this and that, like when that opportunity came to him, he was like, hey, what do you think? Well, so he like, him coming to me, like of the 5 brothers and sisters that we are, like him coming to me, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I have this opportunity. What do you think? You want to be a part of it? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, yeah. In my immediate family, we just bought our second rental property. So
Cool.
I think with that, it's like uh, like getting my husband on board was
Yeah.
definitely a struggle,
Yeah.
because he was like, initially he was like, well, I don't know, like the first house that we're renting, that one, I mean, it was like his bachelor pad. And then when we moved over here, like we would just use that house whenever we would go visit our family, which was like
Mhm.
once a month or less. So I would always tell him like, that house is just gonna like dissolve into nothing. Like nobody's there. We never know what's wrong with it. Like we'll go
Right.
and, you know, something doesn't work and we don't have time to fix it. I'm like, we need to rent it. We need to get somebody in there, rent it out. And he's like, no, what if they screw up the house? What about the
Mm.
renters? What about this? And obviously like renting rules aren't the same in Mexico and in the US. There's really
Sure.
no rules down here. Officially, like laws,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's like best practices, but there's really
Sure.
nothing like legal. So it took a while to convince him, but he was finally like, you know what, you're right. So now we have a renter in there. And now that he did that, he's like, oh my God, you're right. We do need to
Oh,
you know,
yeah. You
get
saw
that
the light.
house. So exactly. So like
Yeah.
we finished paying off this house and he's like, we need to get another one. And I'm like,
Wow.
hold your horses, like wait, like okay. So we shopped around, we got an apartment. It's not an apartment building, just an apartment, but like we're slowly getting there
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And I think that like the more you start, it's really true. I forgot where this said, like once you see one opportunity, once you see the
Something more.
first one, you just start seeing more and more
Yeah.
and more and more,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that happened, and now like friends of my best friend, they have like several restaurants, and now like they want to open up another one, and they came to us like, hey, do you guys want to do you guys want to invest in this? It's an investment opportunity. And you know, we've been having conversations with them to see like, hey, you know,
Wow.
looking at the numbers, looking at stuff like that, see like, hey, does this make sense? Can we do this right now? So I think it's just like knowing and just being in those conversations so much with Steve, and like you said, with his network and the
Yeah.
people that he's with and the questions that are asked, and like being at their mastermind, seeing what people ask, seeing what they take into account, seeing how important relationships are, has been like a huge help. And I honestly don't think that I would be in this
Sure.
position, you know, talking
Yeah.
about investing in a restaurant if I hadn't
Yeah.
started working at Empire, you know, 6 years ago.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I would imagine your experience or exposure to property management has kind of helped with your, you know, tenant situation. Even though the rules are different, it's still kind of, you know, you get someone, you find someone, you put them in there and whatnot, contracts and whatnot. And shoot, what I was going to ask, oh, completely forgot. Old man stuff.
No
Forget
worries.
you're old.
But it's impressive, and wow, just hearing your story, Daniela, is just, I don't know, I get inspired, and it's pretty
Aw,
amazing. So yeah, thank
thank you,
you.
babe.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, like, what are some challenges that you faced? Like, for example, being an assistant, just in everything, also in this event that
it was a really big event, and congratulations for that. It was amazing. So like, what are some challenges that you faced there?
Um, I would probably say the biggest challenge is um I I don't want it to sound weird. I think it's gonna be imposter syndrome. It's
Yes.
probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
Especially because I mean, like I said, my major is physical therapy. Like
Mhm.
I had no idea what it was to be somebody's assistant. Like I I probably had never used Google Calendar before. I probably
Mhm.
had never used like Google Docs. Like all of this was 100% like new to me. And it was very much a fake it till you make it kind
Yeah.
of thing until people were like, oh, since you're the expert in this, you're going to create the training manual. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't know what I'm doing here. Like me thinking like still a year into it, thinking like I'm new here. I don't know what's going on
Yeah.
in my head. When then I'm like, wait a second, like I created this department, I created these processes, I created these
Mhm.
procedures, like really getting out of my head and thinking like realizing like, girl, you did this, like you, and you can do it, and you can you can overcome the new
Yeah.
challenge, and you are up to the new challenge. I think that was definitely the biggest challenge, like especially like when I finally like they were going to close Empire, and I was like, all right, I'm done. Like I did it. I proved to myself I can do it. It was something completely new, an industry I'd never even heard about. I didn't even know. Probably a month into it, I was still wondering, what is a property management company exactly? What are we doing? What are we selling? Um, so I was like, I mean, an industry I didn't even know existed, and I was able to create a full department. I was able to do this. Like I proved
Yeah.
to myself I can do it. And if I could, after not working for a year, I think I was able to do it. I can stop working for 2-3 years and then, do something else again. Like that's not a problem. And then like Steve, like, oh no, you're gonna be my assistant now. And I was like, oh God, especially because I already knew how Steve works. I already knew how like he's the visionary, and he's working at
Yeah.
1,000,000 miles an hour and trying to tell him no and trying to stop him from doing stuff
Mhm.
and trying to get him to slow down. I was
Yeah.
like, am I up to that challenge? So yeah, I think a lot of it's just like probably the biggest challenge is or has been like imposter syndrome, and then
Mhm.
probably as a mom, like fearing that like am I like breaking
Yeah.
yourself into a lot of times there are moments where like everything is so harmonious and everything just happens beautifully and
Yeah.
everything is great, and then all of a sudden, the kid gets sick, the nanny has to do something, she can't come, my husband has to go out of town for business, and I'm over here like, what's going on? Like
Yeah.
everything is falling, and then
Exactly.
I didn't send correctly a contract or something, like a million things happen. And I'm
Yep.
like, am I doing the right thing? Like questioning myself, like, am I doing
Yeah.
the right thing? Should I even be working? Like, I know I don't have to work. I don't need to work, but now I want to work. And like questioning, like in my life, am I doing the right thing? I think
Yeah.
that's like the second biggest challenge. But it's usually just moments like when,
Sure.
shit hits the fan, like a million things that could go wrong do go wrong within a
Yeah.
week, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. I think any parent who loves their kids has that kind of battle, right? And I would imagine Fernanda as a student too, like sometimes you probably feel like,
Mhm.
oh, it's so tough at school right now, but I got to do all
Yeah,
this work. And you feel kind of guilty that you're not giving your all in one or the other, right?
yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, everything's worth it. I think just like
Yeah.
you're working, you're doing all that stuff for something and
Yeah.
going to work out. So yeah.
Yeah. And I could totally relate to the imposter syndrome. So my
Yeah.
background is my degree is in Chinese language, Chinese Mandarin. That's my degree. And so I did the military stuff and then I was a police officer. So it doesn't make sense at all that I own a construction company at all. I don't have any training or anything in construction, just exposure through the years of doing collateral stuff. So I'm constantly, even now, it's like, gosh, why are people listening to me? Why do I need to make this video? Because I'm a former cop and my degree's in Chinese. Why do they want to hear from me? Right. So I'm constantly going through that. I'm reading books. There's a book right here called Overcoming Overcoming the Imposter. This is my next
Mm.
book I'm reading. So, as time goes on, I mean, the voices I've come to realize are always going to be there. But I think with the surrounding yourself by the right people, talking nicely to yourself, those voices get quieter as time goes on. But if you're not careful, they start getting louder and louder, right?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think one of the really also important things, like you hear a lot on, especially now social media and, creating your habits and, how
Yeah.
your thoughts are so important and all of that. Like you hear it a lot, but it doesn't really, or at least for me, it didn't really like hit home until, like you said, like I'm starting to be um directly or indirectly exposed to all this network of people that are
Right.
so amazing and doing so
Mhm.
many things. And you see that a lot of times those common factors are the same. They try to take care of their physical health, they try to take care of their mental health, they try to
Yeah.
have some type of like routine,
Mhm.
try to be consistent with like their morning routines or their affirmations or something. And it's like
Yeah.
there's something there, like there's
Yeah.
something there. So
Mhm.
it is something that I've started doing also with my kids, and like they're so used to it now that like if I don't do it, like the way that I start the affirmations with them is I always like them, hey, are you guys ready, are you ready?
Yeah.
And then we start saying the affirmations, and then like if I don't say it, like we're going to sleep and they're like, mom, you forgot. And I'm like, what? And they're like, are you ready? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm like, do you want to do them today? Like, yeah, I'll do them today. So like they're just so
That's
used to
awesome.
it. So yeah, and I think it's something that like so small, but it does start changing.
Yeah.
And I see it a lot in them. Like maybe in my head, I'm like, I'll start doing it, but like my son, for example, he started horse riding lessons.
Mhm.
And when he got there, it was funny because I asked him, like, do you want to do horse riding lessons? And he's like, yeah. So we get there and he's like, wait, it's a real horse? I'm like, yeah, you gotta like, but I have to get on it. And I'm like,
That's
yeah.
funny.
And he's like, oh my, but he got like super scared. And I'm like, but we went like right now it's like rainy season, right? So it's like in this lienzo charro, like a ranch, like in the middle of nowhere, like Waze
Mhm.
doesn't work. And it's like I got lost. My truck was like in the mud. And I was talking to him the whole time. And there was like this part of mud. And I was like, I don't know if the truck's gonna make it. Like, I'm not sure. And I was like, babe, I'm scared. I was like, maybe we should just turn around. Wait,
Mhm.
before this, I'm having a conversation with him. I'm like, hey, you know what? Remember, you can do it. Remember, you're strong, you're brave.
Mhm.
We just have to try it today. This is like the sample class. If you really don't like it, we don't have to come back, but let's
Right.
just give this one class, like give it your best. If you really
Right.
don't like it, that's fine, but just try it. Even if you're scared, like being brave isn't not being scared, it's doing something even if you're scared.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so he was like, okay. So we get to this like area that I'm like, man, my truck's gonna die. Like it's not gonna go through it. And I was like, babe, I'm scared. I don't think we're gonna do it. And I'm sweating at this point. I'm like, man, I'm not gonna make it. I'm like, babe, I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it. I'm like, maybe I should turn around. He's like, mom, you're brave. You just gotta try it. Try your best. And I'm like,
Uh,
this kid, really? And he's 6. And I was like, this kid just, it's true. Like, what, how can I be preaching to him?
Mhm.
Like, try your best,
Yeah.
try it once. You are brave, you can do it, when
Yeah.
I'm scared of a damn puddle. What is going on? So
That's so
yeah,
funny. Puddles are more scarier than horses, I would say.
I mean,
Mhm. That's funny. What are some of your personal goals that you have that you're working on or that you're working towards?
personal goals. I would say definitely getting like in shape again, or at least
Yeah.
better shape, in some sort of shape that isn't round anymore. I was actually really into CrossFit before I had kids.
Mhm.
I was 3 months pregnant with Luca when I was still doing CrossFit because I didn't even know I was pregnant.
Yeah.
So it was like, damn, I totally fell off that horse. So now that they're a little bit older, I have a little bit more time. It's like, okay, be more consistent
Yeah.
with me. Now that they're not so mommy needy, they're 3 and 6. Mila's about to be 4.
Yeah.
Like they're not that needy of me. Like I can start taking more time for me. Like I think right now it's like
Mhm.
prioritizing myself again.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
is one of like my biggest like personal challenges, like goals, like prioritizing
Yeah.
myself and my health as well, you
Yeah.
know, like just in general, eating better, making better like choices in like the
Sure.
health side.
Yeah. Mhm.
My husband had emergency surgery like a month and a half ago. He had to have his gallbladder taken out. And
Oh,
obviously
yeah.
it wasn't anything like super crazy, but it was kind of like a,
Eye-opening
hey,
experience.
yeah,
Mhm.
like, dude, like this is something
Yeah.
super small that's not like life-threatening in any way.
Yeah.
But you know, we should definitely like start taking, I mean, and we've never been super unhealthy. Like we don't like really do fast food or you know,
Yeah.
stuff like that, but we don't have like a consistent
Mhm.
exercise regimen, or you know, we yeah, I think it just in general being more cognizant of that.
Sure.
Definitely reading more. I do a lot of audiobooks,
Okay.
but I haven't been doing like physical books. And that was that like at my parents' house, I left like my library, like a whole wall, like full
Mhm.
of books. I would probably read a book a week or more. And
Yeah.
now it's like I probably haven't touched a physical book in like I can't remember
That's
when, or
funny.
I'll start it and I can't finish it. Right now it's more like audio. So like I'll go take a walk and I'll put it on, or we're driving somewhere and I'll put it on, you know, stuff like that. So I definitely want to get slowly into like reading physical books
Yeah.
again.
Mhm. Yeah, there is a difference. I mean, I've done both, but there is a difference if you're reading it, I think, vice listening to it. But either way, it's a book, right? You're learning something.
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's
that's
true.
cool.
Yeah.
What about professional wise? What do you have any professional goals that you're working towards?
I think that right now, I think I don't know if there's a cap to where I've gotten, because like as a personal slash executive assistant,
Hmm.
there's really no like hierarchy of like the next step, right? You know, when you're working as
Yeah.
in other types of positions, you can kind of see the stepping ladder really clearly, right?
Yeah.
In other types of positions. When you're working as someone's assistant, it's a lot harder to see where that stepping ladder is, because like you're always assisting, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Right.
think right now I don't have like a defined place. I would say right now, maybe it's more like making sure that the goals that Steve has like
Mhm.
for the next 5 years are achieved, like that I'm
Yeah.
doing all the steps I can to make sure that his goals are achieved.
Yeah.
I do see myself at some point, you know, going forward and doing other stuff on my end.
Sure.
Um, I mean, I've had so many people, like, especially like people that like want to do like hire assistants or assistants that tell me like,
Yeah.
hey, you know, help me with this, help me with that. You know, I do see that happening at some
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
Maybe not right now. I don't have the bandwidth yet.
Yeah.
But I do see like at some point where like more stuff of Steve is more streamlined and that part isn't needed anymore, and my kids maybe grow up a little bit more, I would
Hmm.
be able to like have some other type of maybe consulting.
Sure.
I've had
Yeah.
so many clients of Steve's that, you know, that have asked me like, do you have consulting services on your own? And I'm like,
Yeah.
but Steve is your coach. And they're like, yes, he helps me a lot in this area, but I'd like your consulting services in this other
Yeah.
area. And
Exactly.
I haven't committed to anything yet, because I was like, I personally would like to, hey, you know, yeah, that sounds really interesting, but I'd like to, you know, create my curriculum, you know, create like
Yeah.
my syllabus, like things that I feel would be important for
Exactly.
people to know.
Yeah.
Not just like charge you for like, you know, answering a few questions, you know,
Yeah.
like I'd
Exactly.
like to really
Yeah.
give the value that I feel it would
Yeah.
deserve. So
Put some
I
structure
see
to
that
it. Yeah.
happening. Exactly. So I see
Yeah.
that happening at some point, but definitely not in the like next year.
Sure. Yeah. And I could totally see that. I think, just looking over the last year, I came out to Houston in September, and Steve had that boot camp in Houston, right? Was that the first one he had, or was that the
Yeah.
second one? That was the first one, right?
Mhm.
So going from that to a year later to where what he's doing now, that's a big leap, right? And that's a big leap for him professionally, but it's also a big leap for you professionally too, because you have to grow along with that. Because if you're
Yes.
stuck down here and he's going up here, right? So even though there's no like career ladder, there is growth
Mhm.
in that one position. And the byproduct of that is you have so much influence over people that people look up to you as like, I'm lost. I need to talk to Daniela, right?
Mhm.
I've done that at the beginning of our journey with virtual team members. Like, I need to talk to Daniela. I have no idea. You've helped me out with culture stuff, and how to talk to people. If I run into an issue, I always ran to you. but you have that influence, and I can totally see you have this consulting thing in the future because people already look up to you. And as soon as you open your doors, I'm sure there's going to be a line outside the door waiting for your service. So
Thank
that's going to
you.
be cool. That's going to be great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, cool. So just kind of closing, looking back, I think we could honestly, I think we could probably do another one and talk specifically about like, interviews and virtual team members, what they should consider.
Yeah.
And then also like on the other side, people who are looking for virtual team members, things that they should consider. And I think that's a whole show in itself. And I think that'd be great to have you on that as well. If
Yeah,
you're,
for
yeah.
sure.
But as far as like your own personal journey, when you first started, and maybe you have already answered this, but maybe not, but what would you have liked to have known then when you first started?
Gosh, Excel.
That's funny.
Excel. I wish I had known it more. I wish I knew more about it.
Yeah.
No, I think I don't know. I what would have been a good thing to know then? Um, I think maybe just believing in myself more, like
Sure. Yeah.
realizing that
That's good.
it was that I have. I mean, honestly, if you had told me right like 6 years ago, I would be here, I would been like, no, this isn't going to last more than a couple of months. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this isn't happening. So yeah, I think just like I feel like regardless of the fact that I was skeptical, I still always took my job very seriously, and I still
Sure.
gave it like my 110%. Like I
Yeah.
like regardless of, I was like, you know what, this is probably not going to work out, but it won't be my fault. It didn't work
Yeah.
out. Like I'm going to
Yeah.
give it my all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not going to be like just like a reason why it won't work out. It won't work out because it's just not like something that works, right?
Yeah.
So I think like maybe just believing more that it was like giving it more seriousness and maybe having more vision
Sure.
at that point, because I didn't see like past a few months, because I didn't think I would last more than a few
Yeah.
months. I
Yeah.
didn't think like maybe, I mean, again, imposter syndrome came in, and there was a lot of like, they're going to realize I have no idea what I'm doing. Sooner than later. I may be giving it my 110%, but they're going to
Right.
realize I don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be gone probably sooner than later. So maybe just, believing more in myself, like realizing
Mhm.
like, hey, like
Mhm.
you might not know what you're doing, but like you're still good at it. So
Yeah.
giving myself more props, having more vision as to where that could potentially go. I'm sure there were a lot of missed opportunities. I like just like right now, let's tell you, like there's people that have been like, hey, I want your consulting services. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't give consulting services.
Yeah.
So it's like, those are missed opportunities that like, now I'm like, hey, that could actually work. Maybe not right now, but like taking that
Sure.
like more seriously sooner, I could potentially already have that,
Yeah.
consulting
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
Right. So
Mhm.
yeah, just like being more open to potential opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think I was always very open to like all the everything. I like, one of the things I probably learned from Steve right from the get-go is that
Mhm.
like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly.
So I've always been like really listening in on the conversations that I'm allowed in on. So if it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I need you to come into this meeting to check this out, I'm like, all right, what's going on? Like, and what can I potentially use in, my future stuff or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think that's something that I've always done.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't really, I like opportunities for myself, maybe is what I haven't, it's always been like, what opportunities are, for Steve or for somebody else or
Yeah.
for this and for
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
for myself, I haven't.
Yeah. That's excellent. I like that answer. Someone told me, I don't know who it was or when it was, but like, you got to listen to the clues that people are giving you. If people are asking you like, hey, you're so good at this, I want some help in this area. Those are clues. People look up, that's where you have your influence, right? So I think, yeah, I think that's a great answer. I like that a lot. What about, do you have any regrets of anything that, from the work experience that maybe like, I wish I would have done that better?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of have the same answer too. I'm like, I kind of needed everything I went through to be where I'm at right now, the good and the bad.
Yeah. And I don't feel like anything has been like really bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like one of my like, one of my, I guess my good and bad things is that I'm like way too honest.
Mm,
So I try, that used to, I think it used to be something bad because I used to be the type of person that like, I just tell you the truth,
yeah.
regardless of how it comes out. And
Right.
I've been able to like change that into like, hey, I need to tell you the truth, but I'm going to try to find a good way to say it. Right. I'm going
Yeah.
to try to like not be an a-hole about it.
Sure.
So that's definitely something that's helped me, that I am able to tell people. And sometimes I feel really bad because I'm like, damn, I need to tell this person that they're screwing up, or I need to tell this person that, unfortunately, like as I've helped with placements,
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but unfortunately, like the negative situations that I've had have usually been due to the contractors, not the employees. So
Oh, okay.
people not being responsible, or I don't know, human, I guess,
Yeah.
with the people that they want to hire. So like
Mm,
me having to like go in and say like, hey, like this was not the way to do it. Like
wow.
this is what you agreed to, and you're not like
Yeah.
completing your end of the bargain. So like I would kind of feel bad for having to do that. Like that was definitely something that I didn't want to have to do, but
Yeah.
um maybe no, I don't think like regret. No, I feel
Yeah.
like you said, like maybe small mistakes that I've made have been really for my growth and for the
Sure.
growth of like what
Exactly.
has been created.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I definitely don't think I regret anything.
Excellent. Yeah. I would love to dig into that a little bit more, which with those scenarios with the the employers
Mhm.
in the next episode, just because I think just to give people awareness, like, hey,
Mhm.
if you're gonna have a team member, don't do these things, because they're human and you're dealing with livelihood here. And they're relying on you for an income, a job to support their family. So don't screw that up. And
Mhm.
I want that point to be come across. It's like, just because they're not in the US, they're people, and you're working with real people. So anyway, I don't want to get into that rant, but it is important for sure. But yeah, let's go ahead and go into our final questions there, Fernanda.
Okay. So our final question is, what's the most influential book you've ever read? Or I know you hear a lot of audiobooks, so
Listen to.
which one listen to? So yeah.
Um, like professional type books, I would probably say um The 5 Second Rule by
Hmm.
Mel Robbins.
Is that when you drop food on the ground?
I literally thought that's what it was too. She I still use it with my kids.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's really cool. I would definitely recommend it if you have a chance to listen to the audiobook. She actually reads it, and
Mhm.
she so it's cool because you get to see like how she says things and
Sure.
the intonations she uses. It's really cool. But in general, it's like, I don't know if I have any of these like, ADHD or like
Hmm.
attention deficit or things like that. I kind of feel that I could potentially, because I do have like certain things. And there are like certain times that I can get into these sections that can appear like to be like lazy, where it's just like my brain can't focus on anything and I can't
Yeah.
get anything done. And I was like, what do I need to do to like actually motivate myself? I'll take away all distractors, I'll do this, and I'll still find something like, oh, I'll procrastinate on that. Let me fix this area of my desk. It's super messy, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that book has really helped me kind of like, it's literally called the 5 second rule. So it's like that your life is based on 5 second decisions, right? So like if you
Interesting.
need to do something that you need to do, regardless if it's, eating right or not eating right, or,
Hmm.
doing a project or starting a project or getting ready or getting out of bed, it's like when you realize it, when that thought comes to your head, like, okay, I need to get out of bed. Like you can't sit there. Like you literally have to count down, not up,
Yeah.
count down from 5 to 1. So it's like, all right, I'm getting out of bed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And at 1, you can't think, like you don't think, you actually have to take action and do it.
Yeah.
So it definitely started helping me when I was like, okay, I need to start waking up at 5 a.m. again to do
Yeah.
exercise. And I didn't want to. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, 5-second rule. All right. So just, I mean, I think that's one of the ones that's helped me a lot, like in
Yeah.
that and in like work stuff where it's like, oh, I really need to create that outline already. I'm just procrastinating on it. And it's usually something really simple, but it's just like, maybe since I haven't done it before, it's like the scariness of doing something new. So I'm like, oh, I'll
Yeah.
do it later or whatever. But like reading that book really helped me. You're just remembering like, no, like I have to do it. I have to figure out what the next steps are. I have to figure out like what
Yeah.
this, I have to make that phone call and
Right.
set this up. And even though it's going to be a long process, the sooner I get it done, the better. But just like my brain would be like overwhelmed. And that 5-second rule has definitely helped me. So I would
Awesome.
recommend it if you have a
Yeah.
chance.
I think I
Awesome.
got that on my list now.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to read it. So
Mel
thank you for that.
Robbins.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Daniela. And yeah, as Chris said, we're going to need another episode of talking like all the journey that it's being being a virtual assistant. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, thank you. So just the last question, if someone relates to your story or wants to contact you, how would they contact you?
Probably my Instagram or personal stuff wouldn't be the right way to. But you can email me, Daniela with one A, Daniela at Steve Rozenberg, Steve Rozenberg. So Daniela at steverosenberg.com.
Excellent.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And I don't know, it was incredible talking to you. And thank you so much for being here and being our guest here. So yeah, I don't know if Chris has anything else.
I just want to thank you, Danielle, for your time. Thanks for being willing to be on our show and one of our first guests. I appreciate the relationship we have, the influence you have in both my companies and in me personally and in my team. I just hope you realize that you have a huge part in the success of not just my business, but many others. So I'm very happy to see that things are going really well for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate the invitation. And I would be more than happy to come, talk about virtual assistants or plants or anything else that you guys
Excellent.
want. Thank you so much. I appreciate your words. I appreciate the invitation, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. All right. Well, that was another great episode with Daniela. She's always fun to talk to. She's got some great stories, even just when we were sitting at the couch out at the mansion, a couple months ago. It's just always a joy chatting with her. One thing that really stuck out to me is, when I look at Daniela, I always feel that, man, she knows what she's doing. She's got this, right? And
Yeah.
she comes across as very confident, and she enjoys what she's doing. But to hear her say that she struggles with imposter syndrome is like, oh wow, that's I struggle with the same thing, and I'm sure you probably have your struggles as well, right?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I don't know what you're saying. It relates to me because also when you start, I think, a new job and a new position, you're like, what am I doing here? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing and everything.
Mhm.
It's just it was pretty impressive. I really like this episode because I don't know, it's inspiring for me to hear her journey.
Yeah.
Like for example, I'm just following her steps in a way because I'm also a virtual assistant. Like she has all this experience, and
Right.
just to see how she got developed in this area, like okay, like I'm going to start and everything, and she had the imposter syndrome. I was like, maybe she started and she was like, I know what I'm doing and
Yeah.
everything's fine, and I don't know, I'm doing a perfect job, and it wasn't like that. So
Mhm.
I don't know, it's um it was a really good episode, and I think
Yeah.
I took a lot from it. And also, as you said, just meeting her, it was in June at the mansion,
Yeah.
and just seeing this big event that was
Yeah.
happening with Steve, the coaching, it was really good. Like
Mhm.
all these guests, like real big guests, that they bring all the stories, everything, the food, as
Yeah.
she said, the transportation, everything was
Mhm.
perfect. Everything was
Yeah.
synced, and when she was like, it's the first one that I'm doing, I was like,
I
wow.
know,
I don't know if I could do it just like that good in the first
Yeah.
event. But yeah, I don't know what I keep from that episode. It's just taking the opportunities, like
Yeah.
don't be
Mhm.
afraid, just take the opportunities that are on your life. Like
Yeah.
if you take one, a lot are going to come. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, I liked it too, and she had a good outlook on that too. And the other part that I liked was that she's taking what she's learning from her role with Steve and Empire and using that, leveraging that knowledge and developing her empire in Mexico. And I think that's cool. So that's a byproduct that some of the virtual team members need to really kind of consider, that the byproduct of working around business owners is that you get to learn about business and you get to
Yeah.
learn how to run things. You get to learn from their mistakes. I mean, you've seen plenty of mistakes we've made, right? So when you start your own business, you're like, hey, I'm not going to do that again because Chris screwed that up. So, so that's, I thought that was really cool how she's taking that and she's really developing her own empire down in Mexico.
Yeah, totally. And I think it helps, like for example, it helped me. I didn't know anything about construction, property management. And it
Yeah.
was so funny when she mentioned that it was 1 month and she was like, what's a property management company? Like, what are we selling? Because it happened the same thing to me. When people ask me like, what do you do for work? I'm like, a real estate, but it's like, it was just that I would say like, oh yeah, it's real estate. Like, oh,
Mm.
in what way? Yeah, I think like we sell houses. It's like, no, we don't sell houses. Like after a long time that I started searching, I was like, okay, so that's what we do. We're a property management company, but
Wow.
I don't know. It's not that common here in Mexico. Property
Yeah. Well, your
management
boss is
companies.
horrible for not even explaining that to you. That's terrible. You should
Yeah,
find another
exactly.
job for someone else.
Exactly. Imagine if someone called me like, "Hey, what are you working on? Could you provide some services?" I would say like real estate, property management.
Yeah.
Pacific Rim is real estate company.
Yeah. Yeah. That would have been a big mistake for sure. But that's funny. Well, cool. Yeah. So I'm glad that she's going to jump on again with us. I think we could use some time digging into her experience with working with both the virtual team members and the business owners, both in the US. I think she also works with people in Canada as well. So some key points for virtual team members, which you and I have talked about a bit, but also some things that some of the business owners that are not used to having virtual team members, what they should consider as well. So I think that's going to be a great episode having her on, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, exactly. I think, well, we have all the team here in Mexico, well, Philippines also,
Yeah.
and we have like that part of the view, just like, okay, so we're the virtual team and everything, but also
Mhm.
you as the boss, as the CEO, just managing the
Mhm.
a team. Like I'm curious to see what issues Daniela had with
Yeah.
some business owners on that areas.
Yeah, it'd be great. And then there's something I'm sure that we can learn from too, and make some changes to make us better too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great. Well, another great episode. Thanks, Fernanda, for putting all this together, and looking forward to our next episode next week.
No, thank you. So yeah, everyone, thank you for listening to this podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Stay virtual.